right, joining us now to react to all of today's big news, holding people accountable, deep state, people that abuse power, and the biggest corruption scandal we've seen. Texas Senator Ted Cruz is with us. Senator, between the media and people that we entrust with the powerful tools of intelligence, to see that they rigged an investigation with Hillary, they lied and committed fraud before FISA courts, purposefully, we now know, because they were all warned about who paid for it. They omitted that, what Christopher Steele was all about, defeating Trump, and then bludgeoning the president, trying to undo a duly elected president the way they have. You're a constitutional scholar. You, I think, appreciate how severe this is for the country. How do we rectify this so it never happens again?
Well, let me say, first of all, this weekend was a very good weekend for the president, but even more fundamentally, it was a very good weekend for the country. We've had now 2 years of this special prosecutor investigation, and during the entire time, virtually every Democrat and all the media has been breathlessly covering every minute of it, insisting collusion, 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 collusion. Well, we now have the report from the special counsel. The special counsel concluded there was no evidence, zero evidence of collusion. That's a big deal. Not only that, but we also now know that both the Attorney General, Bill Barr, and the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, concluded that none of the evidence supports charges of obstruction of justice, which means everything the Democrats and media have been talking about for 2 years was lacking in a factual basis. And the entire media has egg on their face. And what are they doing now? They're not apologizing. They're not backtracking. They're not saying, gosh, our facts were wrong. Instead, they're attacking. We're seeing every Democrat pivot to say, oh, no, never mind about conclusion. Never mind about crimes or evidence. And mark my word, Sean, the House Democrats are going to impeach the president anyway, not because of any evidence, not because of any crimes, but because of the fact that he's Donald Trump and they hate Donald Trump. And it's showing just how extreme they are.
You know, you went up against a guy, Beto O'Rourke, as they call him. I have my own names for him. I won't drag you into my mess. But I got to tell you something. I've seen Benjamin Netanyahu as a Churchillian figure that was alone, the sole voice of moral clarity against modern evil in our time until Donald Trump got into office. And I see that O'Rourke literally went after Netanyahu as an ally of racists. And we know that Reuters covered the real story of your opponent for over a year. They made a deal with Beto to hurt you in that election and help him. Well, listen, when it comes to media bias, the Reuters story is truly a smoking gun. Back in 2017, they had evidence that Beto may have committed multiple felonies. The reporter interviewed Beto on the record, and he confirmed it. But then they cut a deal and said, OK, we won't report on it until after the 2018 election. Why? Because they want the Democrat to win. They wanted Beto to beat me. Now that Beto's running against Bernie and against all the other leftists, now Reuters will report it. And it's the media is in bed with the far left wing of the Democratic Party. But I'll tell you, this also reveals, I mean, you're talking about Prime Minister Netanyahu, who I know well and consider a friend, and Churchillian is exactly the right adjective for him. One of the things this reveals, listen, Beto's trying to appeal to the extreme left in the Democratic Party, and one of the ways you do that is by launching anti-Israel attacks. I was at the AIPAC conference this week. Not a single Democratic presidential candidate came to the conference. And we saw just a couple of weeks ago the House of Representatives couldn't pass a simple bill condemning anti-Semitism. Well, I'll tell you, Sean, I've introduced a resolution in the Senate condemning anti-Semitism. I think we need to take it up, and I think we need to put every senator on record. I hope the Democrats are willing to condemn anti-Semitism, the kind of comments these freshman House members are making, things like it's all about the Benjamins, which is nothing but an anti-Semitic trope. I also have legislation to formally recognize as a matter of statute the Golan Heights as part of Israel. This weekend, the president announced that he's going to do that. I've been urging him and the administration to do that for months. That is a tremendous victory for Israel and America, but we need to take up and pass my legislation to put in federal law that the Golan Heights is part of the nation of Israel. All right, Senator, That's unfair, and if you're part of the media and you cover up for, that's a campaign contribution in a major way. Needs to be investigated.
Is there any universe in which Reuters would cut that deal for a Republican?
No.
Can you imagine Reuters doing that?
Of course. Good to see you, Senator. Thank you.
For the reaction now from the White House, Press Secretary Sarah Sanders joins me now from the North Lawn. And Sarah, good morning to you and welcome back on what has turned out to be a rather significant Monday morning. I want to go through a number of things that I've heard from Democrats in a moment here. But first, what the president said was talked about an illegal takedown that failed. When will we hear from him today, Sarah?
You know, the president's got a number of meetings today, and we'll see if some of those open up where he decides to address the press directly. Again, he did so twice yesterday, and I wouldn't be surprised if he does that again today. Okay,
so we'll wait on that. With regard to releasing the full report, is the White House opposed to that, yes or no?
Again, as the president has said, he wants full transparency in this process. We absolutely know and have said for over 2.5 years there was no collusion. Now Bob Mueller is also saying the same thing. But that decision's up to the Attorney General, and the president is leaving it up to him at this point in time.
You wouldn't object to it, though. That's what I'm hearing from your answer. Yes.
Again, we want to make sure that I think some of the biggest things that we have to look at is that we're protecting the office of the president. And it's not just about this president, but it's about the future as well, and making sure things like executive privilege and sources and methods and things like that are protected. And that's why the Attorney General will look at this and make the best decision, not just for this president, but this Attorney General is going to make the best decision for America, and he's going to make the best decision for the office of the president.
Okay, did the AG, Bill Barr, did he confer with the White House on his summary before it went to the Hill?
No, there was not a discussion about details and like a negotiation process of any type between the White House and the Department of Justice.
Did you see it
We got the information about the same time that Congress received the letter the White House was given,
so about
the notification.
About 3:40 in the afternoon on Sunday then. What is the president's reaction to this obstruction, non-collusion? Conclusion, I should say, the obstruction thing.
Be careful, that's a tough one to say.
I get it. Yeah, what's the reaction of the president on that bottom line from Bill Barr?
The bottom line is exactly what we've said it was for 2.5 years. There was no collusion. There was no obstruction. And frankly, I think the Democrats need to be really careful here. So far, what they're doing and what they're saying, they should be embarrassed by. They have said for 2 years, they have repeatedly and breathlessly attacked the president and perpetuated this malicious lie that the president was some sort of foreign agent and working with the Russian government in order to win the election, when really all of the interference between Russia and the election took place under the Obama administration. Let's not forget that Clapper and Comey and Brennan were the ones leading the intelligence community when these things took place, and that Obama was the president at that time. They knew about it. They did nothing to stop it, and I think they need to be very careful about pushing too far down that road.
Is it your hunch, then, that the answers to everything you're raising right now will be satisfied in this Inspector General's report that could be out in May or June, 2 or 3 months from now?
I think everything should be satisfied in the report that just took place. Bob Mueller spent 2 years, as you put those numbers up earlier, 2,800 subpoenas, over 500 witnesses, millions and millions of pages of documents were given to the Mueller team, $25 million wasted in taxpayer dollars to tell us what we've been saying for 2 years. This didn't take place. There was no collusion. The president won and is sitting in the building behind me today because he was a better candidate. He had a better message. He had a better vision for our country, and he outworked his opponent. They have failed at every single step of the way to defeat this president, and they've done it again. And this time they did it at the sake of the American people by putting them through this outrageous process, by wasting their money and making this such a big part of everyday life for Democrats in the media, when they should be focusing on the economy and ISIS and everything else.
The next leg in the story is why so many people chose to believe the dossier in the first place.
Because they wanted to, Bill. It's real simple.
And
they wanted to. They didn't want to believe that Donald Trump had defeated them. They didn't want to believe their own failure. But this report further confirms what we all knew in November of 2016. Donald Trump won, and he won decisively, he won fairly, and he won because he was better.
But my question is, will the IG conclude that? That's what we're trying to figure out in the next leg of the story. Why
I don't know
did
how
so many
anybody
people
could come to any other conclusion.
To believe it. All right, another question here. You're hearing from Democrats a lot. Mueller concluded that Russia tried repeatedly to interfere with our election, but nobody took the bait. And that was one of the conclusions from the Mueller report yesterday and what Bill Barr put out. What has the administration ordered to protect the integrity of the next election 18 or so months from now, Sarah?
If you'll remember, Bill, not too long ago, we had a number of senior administration officials come to the briefing room and walk through in detail how we're taking a whole of government approach, DOD, DHS, DOJ, all of the intelligence community working hand in glove to make sure that what happened in 2016 doesn't continue to happen. And we're looking at and working with all of the state and local officials and making sure that we do everything we can to try to prevent this. Unlike the previous administration, we're actually taking steps to prevent this from happening again, and we're very hopeful in that process, and we're going to continue to work across the board with all of the departments and agencies to make sure it doesn't.
And when will we hear more about that, Sarah?
Again, Department of Homeland Security is one of the leads on this entire whole of government approach. I would certainly encourage you to talk to them, but I'd also encourage you to go back and look at the briefing. I think your network covered it, but a lot of networks did not on the day it took place. They spent about 30 minutes walking through in detail all of the different steps that the Trump administration is doing to protect and uphold the integrity of our elections.
Last point here. James Comey sent out a tweet yesterday. Looked like he was in a redwood forest, and his message was so many questions as he looked up in the skies above him. Lindsey Graham responded to that saying, "Could not agree more. See you soon." When do we hear from James Comey next, Sarah?
Look, I think that Lindsey Graham said it best. See you soon. He was one of the people that failed to do his job. He lied throughout the process. He leaked information that should never have been public. James Comey has been a disgrace to the FBI. Thankfully, this president has stepped in. He took James Comey out of that position and has been working with Director Wray to make sure we don't have similar instances. I think he's got a lot of explaining to do, and if Congress wants to call anybody up to the Hill, he should be one of the very first, followed by his friends Clapper and Brennan. And if they want to look at what really happened and what the failures of 2016 were, they need to look inside of the Obama administration, because that's where they took place.
Hope to see you soon. Sarah Sanders, thank you for your time. From
Absolutely.
the
Always
today.
great to be with you
Thank
guys.
You. All right.